Hey there friends, it's Nick. Right, yesterday if you saw the video you'll have seen that I had to go to the barbers because my hair was becoming a disaster, frankly. And I talked about how when we're thinking about our clients and our customers, they've got two stories in their heads, I think. And one is the story they take with them going into the transaction, and the other is the story that they take going out. And I talked about the fact that I never really enjoy going to get my hair cut. Never really look forward to it. It's just a pain. So I haven't got a particularly positive story on the front side. But on the other side of the transaction, I'm telling myself the story, which is, well, that's good. I've got that out of the way. Don't have to do it again for another 2 or 3 months. Plus, I can get out of the shower, towel off my hair and just get on with my day, which is how I like it. But one thing I didn't say yesterday was that obviously the sort of, if you think about those two stories as an equation, the result at the end has to be positive. You know, if you're selling an iPhone, for example, maybe you're lucky, you're selling an iPhone, and maybe your customer therefore has a positive story on the way in. They're excited because they're going to get an iPhone, and they're also happy on the way out because they've got their iPhone and they're really enjoying it. And if you've got a business like that, congratulations. Most of us don't have those kind of businesses, do we? Most of us are convincing people that the money they're about to invest will be worth the gain on the other side. So take me for an example. My consultancy practice is about helping leaders, mavericks and misfits tell epic stories really about their business, their brand and their products and services. And, you know, I charge almost $1,000 for that service. You know, to get someone to work with me for 2 or 3 days, I charge nearly $1,000. And, you know, my job is to convince them that having that kind of that epic story that connects and resonates with their audience will help them spread information about their product, their service, their brand. It will build their profile or their profits. And, you know, and I think we've all seen that stories play a massive part in business, especially these days, but still, they are still going into that transaction with potentially a kind of, you know, well, I've got £1,000 here, do I really want to spend it? And that's what I mean about that overall equation having to be positive. And one of the things we can do is if you've got if you're dealing with a negative front story or what have you, you can go at it in a different way. So this is what happened at the barbers yesterday. I've been going to the same barbers on and off for 40 years probably, and it's a ratty old tiny room buried in the back of this building in the little town near where I live, and it's for 60 years more or less it was owned by the same guy. His father had owned it before him, and then a couple of years ago it changed hands, and the new guy is doing something really interesting. He is telling a different story, and it's reflected in the way he's theming out the place, he's kitting out the place, because every time I go, he's added some new bit. And it's not just a lick of paint and a new covering on the chairs. He's got an aesthetic sense. And now you go in, you have to go down a long corridor, and now it's lined with wallpaper that's got books over it, and there's a grandfather clock sitting there. And when you go into this little room, and the lighting's changed. There's like steampunk lighting on the walls now. So you've got pipes coming out of the walls with light bulbs on them. Really effective stuff. The mirrors, the old sort of flat pieces of glass are gone. And you've got these amazing ornate kind of gold and silver mirror frames sitting in front of these sort of stations, if you like, these hairdressing stations. And he is gradually telling a different story. And that is a very long-term strategy, right? You know, he's spending a lot of money, but what he's doing is he's changing the experience of going to the barbers. And he's making the experience of going to his barbers unique. And I think that's really interesting because a haircut is a commodity, but going to this particular barber's is not a commodity because he's building a themed experience. It's a bit like, I was going to say it's like getting your haircut at Disneyland, and there is an element of that, but it's quirkier. It's really quirky. And what it does is it means that I'm telling myself a slightly different story about going to the barbers next time. because, you know, it's not just about getting my hair cut. It's not just that single transaction. It's also about stepping inside this guy's head, which is, you know, it turns out it's quite an interesting place to be. So if you're dealing with that kind of story, if you've got that kind of thing, you know, what are the ways in which you can affect your customers or your clients' perception on another kind of vector? I'm definitely going to be thinking about this myself this week. But you might like to too, and, you know, think about how there are other ways in which you can add value to that kind of transaction, whether you've got a website or you know, an office or something that people come to, because I think it's really valuable, and it gets us thinking about the stories that our clients are telling themselves. And of course, you know, for all the stuff we're doing about ourselves and promoting ourselves and what have you, what really matters is the stories the clients tell themselves, and therefore the stories they tell other people. Listen, I've just told you about this barber in Romsey who's got a really interesting aesthetic, and, you know, I'm not going to be the only one doing that.